The stars were dying that night. One by one, they flickered out across the edge of the Orion arm, swallowed by a spreading darkness that shimmered like oil against the void. Every sensor, every telescope, every listening post in the galaxy turned toward that region of space, and what they saw made even the proudest empires tremble. A ship, if it could still be called that, was moving through the void. It was blacker than the emptiness around it, its outline uncertain, its presence bending light and logic alike. The old stories called it a myth, a warning whispered across ages. But the myths were wrong. The black ship was real, and it had returned. Across the galactic frontier, civilizations once thought immortal began to fracture. The empire of Orion, with its gleaming worlds and endless fleets, reported entire sectors falling silent. The Kalari Dominion, whose technology shaped the orbits of suns, began evacuating border colonies in fear of an unseen threat. Yet no one could say what the black ship wanted, or if it wanted anything at all. It did not communicate, did not attack in the way wars were fought before. It simply arrived, and things began to die. Not just ships or worlds, but the energy within them, as if life itself was being unmade. Far from the core of the collapsing empires, a small human outpost named Horizon listened. It was a forgotten station, orbiting a dying red star, home to a few scientists, traders, and wanderers who still believed curiosity could survive the decay of the galaxy. Among them was an observer who had spent a lifetime studying cosmic patterns and predicting stellar births. But even with all her instruments, she couldn't explain the readings coming from the void. The energy was unlike anything recorded before, cold yet alive, chaotic yet deliberate. She knew what it meant long before anyone else dared to say it aloud. Something older than the empires was awakening. When the first transmission arrived, it was a whisper. A low, broken sound carried on frequencies thought unusable, a tone that resonated in the bones rather than the ears. It came from the edge of the black ship's path, where a Kalari research vessel had vanished minutes earlier. The data packet contained no image, no voice, only a single symbol burned into its code, a circle split by shadow. It was the same mark found on ancient ruins across forgotten worlds, etched into stone that predates written history. Humans had seen it before, carved on the walls of the lost colony of Eos. Scholars once thought it was ceremonial, a relic of extinct cultures. Now it looked like a warning. As panic spread, the grand powers of the galaxy turned to their fleets. They sent dreadnoughts and carriers armed with the strongest weapons ever built, confident that firepower would preserve their dominance. Yet every encounter ended the same way: silence. Ships disappeared without distress signals, and when wreckage was found, it floated lifeless, drained of energy, as if time itself had been erased from the metal. It was not destruction as much as erasure, and it terrified even those who had ruled through fear. Among the chaos, one transmission broke through, a distress call from an Imperial scout ship near the frontier. The message lasted only 20 seconds before cutting out, but those seconds changed everything. A distorted image appeared of a vast black silhouette emerging from the shadows, its surface rippling with faint patterns that looked almost alive. Around it drifted fragments of ships and debris, moving as if caught in invisible currents. Then, just before the feed ended, something resembling light burst from the ship's core. Except it wasn't light at all. It was absence. For centuries, alien empires had believed themselves eternal. They built monuments on moons, turned planets into engines, and shaped life to their image. But the black ship reminded them how fragile even the greatest power could be. As worlds fell silent and alliances crumbled, whispers spread of an older truth, that this was not the first fall. Across forgotten archives and buried libraries, humans uncovered fragments of records suggesting that the black ship had appeared before, thousands of years ago, when the first stars began to burn. Back then, it had no name. Now it was the shadow of their own creation. Some said the ship was not alien at all, that it was built by hands long gone, by those who had sought to control the fire of creation itself. Others believed it was something alive, born in the deep folds of the universe, feeding on the ambition of those who tried to dominate it. But one thing was certain: wherever it passed, something new was left behind. Not ruins, not death, something stranger. Planetary surfaces were found changed, landscapes rearranged into geometric patterns, metallic veins pulsing beneath the soil. The ship did not simply destroy, it transformed. Humanity, long considered insignificant beside the ancient powers, found itself at the center of the mystery. While the empires fell into chaos, humans began to piece together the pattern of the ship's movements. It was not random. It was following a trail, crossing points where great battles had once scarred the galaxy, sites where massive energy had been unleashed. To some, it seemed as though the ship was feeding on the echoes of past wars. To others, it was searching for something buried deep in the ruins of time. And the next location in its path was Earth's forgotten colony zone. The station horizon became the eye of the storm. The observer and her small crew knew they had days, maybe hours, before the black ship reached their sector. They could already feel it in the air, a low vibration that made their instruments shudder. Power fluctuated without reason. The star they orbited dimmed, as if hiding from what was coming. Messages from nearby systems stopped arriving, and in the silence that followed, a single transmission appeared on their screens. Coordinates pointing to an uncharted moon at the edge of the system. Something about those numbers felt deliberate, almost human. Against every order, the crew decided to go. The shuttle's engines roared to life, its hull trembling as if aware of the risk. The red star loomed behind them, a faint reminder of how small they truly were in the face of what awaited. As they approached the moon, strange structures began to appear. Towers of black stone half buried in the dust, pulsing with the same patterns seen on the ship. It was as if the surface itself was breathing. When they landed, the ground trembled beneath their boots. The air felt heavy, charged with a presence that seemed to watch them from every direction. At the center of the valley stood a single obelisk, etched with the circle and shadow symbol, glowing faintly as they approached. The observer reached out her hand and felt warmth radiating from the stone. For a brief moment she thought she heard voices, distant, layered, and ancient. Then, as her fingers touched the surface, the glow intensified. The sky darkened, the light from the star vanished, and from beyond the horizon, a massive shape began to rise, blocking the heavens. The black ship had arrived. In that moment, every empire, every world, every creature that had survived until now would soon learn the same truth, that what they had feared was not coming to end their story. It was coming to finish what they had begun. And somewhere in that vast silence, as the ship's shadow fell across the moon, a voice whispered through the static, "You called us back!" Then everything went dark. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. No wind, no hum of engines, no sound at all. Only the faint pulse of the obelisk beneath their hands. The observer stood frozen, her breath fogging in the thin air, as the black shape above them swallowed the horizon. The ship did not move like anything built by known hands. It drifted in stillness, its surface shifting like liquid shadows, reflecting nothing, absorbing everything. For a moment she felt weightless, as if the world beneath her feet was slipping away. Then the instruments on her wrist flickered back to life, their readings spinning wildly before freezing on one impossible number: 0. Every measurable force around them, from gravity to radiation, had been erased. The others in her crew, 5 souls bound by curiosity more than duty, looked to her for direction, but she had no answers. One of them, a quiet engineer with eyes that had seen too many failed expeditions, whispered that they should leave. Yet something in her refused. She had spent her life chasing signals from the unknown, always believing that discovery meant understanding. But now, standing under the shadow of the black ship, she began to realize discovery could also mean awakening something better left forgotten. They retreated inside the shuttle for shelter, though its hull creaked under the strange tension pressing from above. The onboard lights dimmed and brightened in irregular rhythms, as if responding to something unseen. The observer stared at the feed from their external cameras. The obelisk outside was glowing more strongly now, its symbols rearranging in slow, deliberate motion. They weren't just markings, they were patterns, messages, perhaps coordinates or warnings. The ship's shape loomed larger as the minutes stretched into hours. It didn't land, didn't even descend. It simply hung above the moon like a wound in space. Every few moments, faint lines of light would ripple across its surface, moving in spirals that resembled a pulse. The crew tried transmitting distress calls, but their signals never left the system. The comms displayed nothing but static that seemed to breathe, and when one of them adjusted the antenna toward the ship, the static changed, forming short bursts, rhythmic and deliberate. Not random interference, communication. Back on the outpost horizon, far above the dead moon, the rest of the station had gone into full lockdown. The remaining staff gathered in the main observation deck, staring at the dark screen that once showed their crew's vitals. Only one faint connection remained, a heartbeat signal from the shuttle, steady but distant. No video, no audio, only proof that someone was still alive. The commander of the station, a stern man who had spent most of his career cataloging dead worlds, stood in silence. He had always dismissed legends of ancient beings and hidden ships, believing every mystery had a scientific explanation. But now, watching the black ship blot out the moonlight, he began to question the limits of reason. Records were retrieved from the archives, old transmissions buried in encrypted channels, data that had been dismissed as myth centuries ago. They spoke of the Black Birth, an event that had once nearly erased an entire galactic sector. The description matched everything now unfolding, the energy anomalies, the silence, the shifting symbols. And in the middle of those records, one line stood out: "It rises where memory burns brightest." The phrase repeated several times, as if left behind by someone who had witnessed it before. No one could decipher its meaning. Some thought it referred to the remnants of war, others believed it described the emotions of those who watched it come, the fear, the awe, the collective memory of destruction. Back on the moon, the observer decided to step outside once more. The air shimmered faintly, carrying a strange warmth that hadn't been there before. She walked toward the obelisk again, her boots leaving prints in the dust that vanished moments later, as though the ground itself was rewriting reality. Her hand hovered just above the glowing surface, and this time she noticed the light responded to her movement. Patterns shifted faster, mirroring her breathing. Then, without warning, an image flashed in her mind: stars collapsing, cities falling, and a vast black ocean filled with burning lights. She gasped and stumbled backward. The engineer caught her, but her eyes were distant, unfocused. She had seen something that didn't feel like memory, yet too vivid to be imagination. She tried to describe it, but the words failed. All she could say was that the ship wasn't here to destroy. It was here to reclaim. When asked what that meant, she could only shake her head. "We built it," she whispered, her voice trembling, "long before we knew what we were creating." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity had been exploring the stars for centuries, but compared to the elder empires, they were newcomers. Still, there were ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy that no one could explain, structures made of impossible materials, radiating faint signatures of human DNA. Scholars had debated for years whether humans were truly as young as they believed. Now the thought that the black ship might be their own creation, forgotten by time, filled them with dread. The energy around the moon continued to change. The ship's presence was altering the space itself. Stars nearby appeared distorted, and time readings no longer aligned. Seconds stretched, sounds echoed too long, and shadows lingered even after the light was gone. They realized they were standing inside something beyond ordinary physics, a field that might have been both technology and living will. The observer began recording everything, desperate to preserve what she could before the ship's influence consumed them. On Horizon Station, sensors started detecting similar anomalies spreading outward. The blackness wasn't confined to the moon anymore. It was expanding across the system like a wave. Planets, asteroids, even light itself began bending around the epicenter. The commander issued an evacuation order, but most knew it was already too late. The ship wasn't just near, it was becoming part of space itself. In the middle of this chaos, a faint signal broke through the static, coming directly from the observer's shuttle. It was short and fragmented, filled with interference, but her voice was clear enough to freeze everyone listening. "It's not death," she said. "It's transformation. The ship. It remembers us. It remembers everything we forgot." Then the signal cut out completely. On the moon's surface, the obelisk began to dissolve, turning into streams of dark light that lifted into the air. The ground vibrated with a deep hum that matched the rhythm pulsing from the black ship above. The crew tried to run back to the shuttle, but their movements slowed as the air thickened, as if they were wading through invisible currents. The engineer reached the ramp first, shouting for the others to hurry, but the observer remained still, staring up at the ship. Its shadow spread wider, engulfing the entire valley, and for the first time, she thought she saw shapes within it. Structures, corridors, lights flickering like a heartbeat. She realized then that the ship wasn't truly a vessel. It was a memory. A fragment of something once alive, carrying echoes of a civilization that might have given birth to all others. Every empire that had risen after had merely inherited its remnants, building over its ruins. And now, as the stars dimmed once more, the original creators were waking up through the only tool they ever needed, the black ship itself. The ground beneath her cracked open, revealing a faint glow from below. The dust lifted in spirals, drawn upward toward the ship's hull. Her communicator buzzed faintly with a voice from the station, pleading for her to respond. She pressed the button, whispering one last thought before the signal broke apart in static. "We were never the first," she said softly. "We were just their reflection." Above, the ship's surface rippled, and a single beam of darkness fell toward the moon. It wasn't destructive. It was precise, almost surgical, reaching toward the valley like a searching hand. The observer's figure vanished into the lightless beam, leaving the rest of the crew frozen in horror. For a moment, the world was silent again. Then the ship began to move, slowly drifting away from the moon, leaving behind only a crater of obsidian glass where the obelisk once stood. From orbit, Horizon Station captured the entire event before their systems finally failed. The last image transmitted showed the ship turning toward deep space, following a line invisible to any known path. No explosion, no aftermath, only quiet. And in that quiet, the galaxy held its breath. The empires that still stood would soon learn the truth the humans had glimpsed too late. The black ship was not an ending. It was a beginning that had been waiting in the dark since the dawn of time. And somewhere within its shifting core, something new was awakening, something that remembered fire and the shadows that were born from it. In the days that followed, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The black ship had vanished from the moon's orbit, but its presence lingered like an afterimage burned into every sensor and every mind that had witnessed it. Horizon Station drifted in silence, its surviving crew uncertain whether they were safe or simply waiting for their turn. The data they recovered from the observer's final recordings showed things that defied understanding. Fluctuations in space-time, gravitational pulses that followed no physical law, and a frequency hidden beneath the static, repeating endlessly like a heartbeat. No one knew what it meant, but it was there, echoing through every system it touched. The commander of Horizon replayed her last words again and again. We were never the first. We were just their reflection. Those words haunted him more than the disappearance itself. If she was right, then the ship was not an invader. It was a remnant of something humanity had once been part of, something vast and forgotten. That idea spread quickly through the remaining crew, dividing them. Some wanted to destroy the data to keep what they had seen from spreading panic. Others believed it was their duty to uncover the truth, no matter the risk. In the quiet corridors of the station, old loyalties began to crack. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the empires continued to crumble. The Kalari Dominion was at war with itself, blaming internal factions for calling the Black Ship into their region. The Orion Empire shut down its stargates and sealed its borders, cutting off entire systems in fear of contamination. Rumors spread that entire worlds were disappearing, not destroyed, but folded into the ship's path, leaving behind fields of glass and silence. Yet amid the fear, a few voices began to rise, whispering that the ship was not a curse but a messenger. They called themselves the Witnesses, claiming that the Black Ship was guiding the galaxy toward something greater, something reborn from the ashes of its arrogance. Back on Horizon, the commander faced a choice. The remaining scientists had discovered that the strange signal embedded in the static was spreading faster than any known communication could travel. It wasn't moving through space. It was moving through matter itself, carried in the structure of atoms, resonating like a buried code. If left unchecked, it could reach every inhabited world in weeks. They didn't know what it would do when it arrived, but the readings showed one clear pattern. It was amplifying. Whatever the ship had awakened was still active and growing stronger. In the engineering bay, the station's chief technician spent sleepless nights decoding the waveform. He began to notice a faint structure within it, almost like a voice pattern, though too complex to belong to a single being. Late one night, when he isolated the lower frequencies, he heard something, words forming through distortion. It wasn't in any known language, but somehow he understood it. It spoke of fire and return, of memory carved into light. The words felt familiar, as if buried deep within his own thoughts. He stumbled back from the console, shaken by the realization that the message wasn't directed at the galaxy. It was directed at humans, specifically. While he debated whether to tell the commander, strange things began to happen aboard the station. Lights flickered in patterns matching the pulse of the signal. Doors opened and closed without command. Machines that had been offline since the power loss suddenly reactivated, performing functions no one had programmed. At first, the crew blamed technical failures, but when the technician ran diagnostics, the logs showed something impossible. Commands were being written from within the system, from an unknown user listed only as Origin. The commander ordered the core systems isolated, but the interference spread faster than they could contain it. The station itself seemed to be waking up. Through the transparent observation deck, the crew could see faint traces of light moving across the hull. Thin, branching lines resembling the same patterns seen on the obelisk. It was as if the Black Ship had left its mark behind, and now that mark was rewriting everything it touched. Down in the communication bay, a young officer discovered that one of the satellite receivers was still functional. Against orders, she tried to boost its range, hoping to contact another human outpost. But instead of finding a distress channel, she picked up a faint transmission repeating from deep space. It was human. The signal carried the signature of a colony that had been destroyed decades ago, wiped out during the early frontier wars. The voice on the other end was calm, almost serene. "We are not lost," it said. "The dark remembers us." Then the message repeated. No one could explain how a dead world could send a live signal. Elsewhere, in the heart of the Orion Empire, their central council was in chaos. The Empire's vast defense networks had detected the same frequency spreading through their systems. Scientists argued that it wasn't a weapon. It was information, rewriting energy fields on a molecular scale. The more they tried to block it, the stronger it became. Desperate, the Council ordered the destruction of several infected relay stations, but it was already too late. Within hours, entire planetary grids began to change. Energy signatures fluctuated, and strange geometric shadows appeared in the sky, hovering above cities like reflections of invisible structures. Panic erupted, and millions fled toward the outer colonies. Yet in the midst of the terror, some claimed to see figures in the light, humanoid silhouettes standing within the shadows, watching. Back on Horizon, the technician finally confessed what he had heard in the signal. He played the audio for the commander, who listened in silence as the voice repeated its cryptic phrases. Born of fire, returned through shadow. There was something oddly rhythmic about it, like a song remembered from childhood. The commander felt an ache of recognition, though he couldn't explain why. The words stirred a feeling of both dread and nostalgia. The observer's last message echoed in his mind. It remembers us. Maybe the ship wasn't invading. Maybe it was awakening something buried in all of them. Then came the new readings. The moon where the black ship had appeared was now emitting its own signal, pulsing at the same frequency as Horizon's systems. The surface had changed. What was once rock had turned smooth, reflective, almost metallic. Scans revealed faint energy signatures moving beneath it, as though the planet itself had come alive. The commander realized the ship hadn't left destruction behind. It had planted something. Meanwhile, one of the scientists working in the station's biology lab noticed that small traces of organic material collected from the moon were changing at the cellular level. The samples began to rearrange, growing patterns similar to neural structures. They weren't alive in the traditional sense, but they responded to stimuli, light, sound, even thought. When she whispered near the containment unit, the patterns pulsed faster, as if listening. She tried to stop the analysis, but the samples reacted violently, spreading across the glass like veins. She froze the container, but deep inside, the faint glow of the same circle and shadow symbol appeared. The more the crew learned, the less they understood. Every discovery only deepened the mystery. Was the ship rebuilding a civilization? Was it using their minds, their technology, to piece together something ancient? No one could say for sure, but one thing was certain. The transformation wasn't finished, and the more they resisted it, the more it adapted. In the quiet hours before the station's artificial dawn, the commander stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the blackened moon below. The stars beyond seemed dimmer, as though the universe itself was growing tired. Then he saw it, a faint movement at the edge of the void, a shadow where there should have been none. Another ship, or perhaps the same one, returning. He couldn't tell. Its surface rippled faintly, mirroring the pulse of the signal still echoing through his systems. For the first time, he understood the true nature of their conflict. This was not a battle of survival. It was a struggle against memory. The black ship wasn't conquering the galaxy. It was restoring something that had been erased long ago. And humanity, in all its fear and pride, was standing in the way of its own forgotten origin. As the shadow grew larger, the lights in the station dimmed once more. The air vibrated with that same low hum, and the consoles began to display a single word in every language known to humankind: awaken. No one yet knew what it meant. But deep down, every heart on Horizon felt the same thing. The end of the old world had already begun. The question now was not how to stop it, but what they would become when the darkness finally remembered their name. The word awaken stayed on every screen, glowing softly in the dark. No one moved. The crew of Horizon Station stood frozen as the hum of the black ship deepened into something almost musical, resonating through the metal walls. Then the lights cut out completely, and for the first time since the ship's first appearance, the void outside wasn't empty. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of faint shapes began to appear around the station. They weren't solid ships, not entirely, but echoes of them, ghost-like forms flickering between existence and nothingness. Each one pulsed with the same strange rhythm, like heartbeats syncing with the same pulse that had haunted their instruments for weeks. The commander ordered emergency power, but the system didn't respond. The technician tried to bypass control manually, yet every attempt was overwritten by the same message flashing in every language. "They are not coming. They are already here." The words made no sense at first, but as the station trembled under invisible pressure, the crew realized the truth wasn't about distance. It was about time. Whatever the black ship represented, it wasn't arriving from somewhere else. It was reappearing from some other when. Outside, the shadows began to take form, each one distinct but connected, as if they were fragments of the same colossal being spread across moments in time. Some looked like pieces of broken cities drifting in space. Others resembled twisted reflections of known vessels from the past. It was as if the ship was assembling something from memory, something that had once existed and was now being rebuilt. The technician stared at the data feed, realizing the readings matched structures lost millennia ago in the first galactic wars. The black ship wasn't creating new vessels. It was bringing the past back to life. The commander tried to contact Central Command, but no signal escaped the distortion field surrounding them. The stars outside seemed wrong now, their positions shifting slightly every few minutes. Time around horizon was bending, looping, and stretching in ways no one could measure. It was as though the station had been pulled into the same space-time fracture that birthed the black ship. And then, in the middle of the chaos, the observer's voice returned. It came through the intercom, faint and broken, yet unmistakably hers. "Don't fight it," she whispered. "You can't destroy what you're made of." The sound froze everyone. She had vanished with the ship days ago, presumed lost forever, but now her voice was calm, almost human, almost familiar. "We tried to silence it once," she said. "We erased the memory, but it never left us. It was waiting for us to remember." The commander demanded to know where she was, but no answer came. Only a low, rising hum that seemed to come from within the walls. Then one of the side corridors lit up with a strange glow. The technician and the young officer went to investigate, their flashlights cutting through the flickering darkness. As they reached the airlock, the metal door began to bend inward, groaning like something alive. The technician tried to seal it, but it melted open in slow, fluid motion, revealing a figure standing in the threshold. It was the observer, or at least it looked like her. Her suit was torn, her eyes faintly glowing with the same dark light that had covered the obelisk. Yet she was breathing, speaking, and moving like herself. When she stepped forward, the air around her shimmered as if reality itself was trying to decide whether she was truly there. The officer backed away, trembling, but the commander arrived before anyone could react further. She looked at him, and for a moment, something purely human flickered in her expression. Fear, exhaustion, hope. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "They're not invaders. They're the architects. We're the ones who forgot who we are." Her voice cracked slightly, and that hint of weakness made her seem real again. "When they built the first worlds, they left behind echoes, machines, fragments of thought, the beginnings of everything that would follow. Over time, those echoes became us." The technician stared at her, confused. "You're saying we're part of them?" She nodded. "Not part. Descended. The black ship is the last of their kind, a vessel of living memory. It's searching for its lost pieces, us." The commander stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Then why the destruction? Why erase entire systems? Because those systems resisted, she said. They corrupted the code. The empires built over the ruins, twisting what they didn't understand. The ship's purpose is to restore balance, to bring the galaxy back to the pattern it was meant to follow. She paused, glancing toward the flickering windows. And now it's found the final signal, the one encoded in human DNA. That's why it came back. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Outside, one of the ghostly ships had solidified completely, a vast black form with intricate veins of glowing silver running across its hull. It was almost identical to the black ship, but smaller, more defined, like a replication. It began to move toward them, its presence pulling Horizon Station closer with invisible gravity. The hull groaned, panels ripped free, and the entire station shuddered as energy surged through its core. The technician yelled that the ship was linking with their systems. Screens filled with cascading symbols that looked almost alive, forming a spiral of data spinning toward a central point. The observer stepped closer to the main console, her hand trembling. "It's using us," she said quietly. "It's not here to destroy. It's trying to rebuild itself through us." The commander shouted for power shutdown, but every control was overridden. The walls began to vibrate, and a faint light spread along the floor, tracing patterns that mirrored the same designs from the obelisk. The crew realized they were standing inside something more than a station now. Horizon was being rewritten, transformed into part of the ship's vast network. Then came the second twist, one that shattered every belief they still held. As the connection deepened, the main display showed a new image forming, an outline of a planet. At first it looked like any other world, blue and green with faint white clouds, but when the resolution sharpened, every person on the bridge froze. It was Earth, or rather what looked like Earth, but not as they knew it. The continents were different, the oceans deeper, and the atmosphere thicker with unknown energy. Data scrolling beside the image revealed impossible coordinates. The planet wasn't in their galaxy at all. It was outside of time, recorded as part of a memory structure buried within the ship's core. The technician whispered the only words that made sense. "It's not showing us a world, it's showing us a memory of one." The observer's expression changed. "No," she said softly. "It's showing us the beginning." As the image stabilized, voices began to echo faintly through the room, human voices, laughing, speaking in long-forgotten dialects. Then came the sound of rushing wind, water, and something that could have been fire. It was as though the station itself was remembering. The commander stared at the image, feeling an ache in his chest he couldn't explain. "You're saying we came from that?" The observer met his gaze. "No, we made that." Before anyone could grasp what she meant, the image of Earth dissolved into darkness, replaced by thousands of points of light, each representing a world, a time, a memory. They realized then that the ship wasn't just a machine. It was a library of creation, a record of every civilization that had ever existed. And now it was waking up, pulling those memories back into the present, rewriting the universe according to its design. The young officer looked out the window again. The ghost ships outside had stopped moving. They were aligning, forming a vast circular pattern around Horizon Station. In the center of that circle, space itself began to twist, folding inward like a wound healing in reverse. A blinding pulse of white light spread outward, shaking the station to its core. When the light faded, a new shape hung in the void, an enormous black sphere with faint rings of energy rotating around it. It wasn't just another ship. It was something far larger, older, and alive. The observer whispered a single word: "The core." The commander demanded to know what it was. She hesitated before answering. "The heart of the architects, the source of their power, the last piece of what we used to be." The technician turned back to the consoles, his voice shaking. "If that's true, then it's calling to us. Look, the DNA resonance. It's syncing with our biology. The commander stared at the readings, his pulse quickening. The signal wasn't just affecting machines anymore, it was affecting them, their cells, their memories, their very sense of self. The realization hit him like cold fire. The ship wasn't remaking the galaxy. It was remaking them. And as the core pulsed once more, the stars around them began to vanish, swallowed by the same growing darkness that had started it all. In the last flicker of light, the commander saw his reflection on the viewport glass, and for an instant, he wasn't sure if the eyes staring back were still his own. The darkness pressed in from all sides, heavy and alive, as the core pulsed brighter with each passing second. The station shook under its pull, panels tearing loose, alarms screaming uselessly over the roar of shifting gravity. The commander gripped the console, his knuckles white, as the data scrolled faster than he could read. The resonance had reached its peak. Every human on board was now synchronized with the same pulse as the core. Their hearts, their breathing, even their thoughts seemed to move in rhythm with the ship. It was no longer just an external force. It was inside them. The observer stood in the center of the bridge, calm amid the chaos. The dark glow in her eyes was stronger now, but her voice was steady. "This is what they built us for," she said, "to remember, to awaken what we buried." Her words cut through the noise, and for a moment even the trembling metal seemed to pause. The black ship was never meant to destroy. It was meant to bring us back together. The commander turned toward her, struggling against the growing pull of the core. "Back together as what?" he demanded. "As them? As machines?" She met his gaze. "As both. We were never just human or alien. We're what came after." The technician shouted from the side panel. "The resonance field is consuming our systems. If it keeps rising, the station will merge with the core." "Can we stop it?" the commander asked. The technician hesitated, his hands trembling over the controls. "Maybe. If we reverse the polarity on the station's reactor, we might overload the link and sever the connection, but it'll destroy us too," the commander finished quietly. Everyone on the bridge fell silent. The hum of the ship filled the air like a living heartbeat. The observer closed her eyes, her expression unreadable. "You can't stop it," she said softly. "This isn't about saving the station. It's about choosing what we become when the cycle restarts." The commander looked at his crew, faces pale, frightened, but still human. He thought of the countless worlds already lost, the people who would never know why. Maybe she was right. Maybe the ship wasn't an enemy, but surrendering meant giving up everything that made them who they were. "We may have come from them," he said, "but we're not them anymore." He turned to the technician. "Do it." The order hit the air like a spark. The technician's fingers flew across the console, overriding systems, locking in manual control. The lights flickered red, and the deep hum of the reactor began to rise. Warnings blared across the screens, but the commander held his ground, watching as the energy patterns began to shift. The station shuddered violently, throwing sparks across the room. The observer stepped forward. "You don't understand. If you break the link now, you'll tear reality apart. The core isn't just here. It's tied to the fabric of everything." "Then maybe it's time we rewrote that fabric," the commander said. A deep rumble echoed through the hull. Outside, the ghost ships started collapsing, their forms twisting into streams of light drawn toward the core. The circular formation shattered as waves of energy rippled through the void. The commander's crew held their stations, every muscle straining against the weight pressing down on them. The technician screamed over the noise. "Reactor at 90%! Once it hits 100, there's no turning back!" The observer's voice was almost a whisper. "You can't kill what you are!" "I can try," the commander said. The floor cracked beneath them, glowing with streams of light as the resonance field surged through every surface. The ship's hum grew to a deafening roar. The commander grabbed the control handle, forcing the final override. The instant he did, the light exploded outward, blinding and soundless. For a moment, everything stopped, No motion, no time, no thought, just silence. Then light returned. The station was gone. The black ship was gone. Only the commander remained, standing in what looked like open space. But it wasn't space. The stars were frozen around him, motionless, like memories suspended in glass. Before him stood the observer, though she was no longer human. Her form flickered between shapes, human, alien, machine, until she settled into something both familiar and impossible. "You broke the cycle," she said quietly, "but you didn't destroy it." He looked around, trying to understand. "Where are we?" "In between," she said. "The core was never a weapon. It was a bridge, a way to unite everything that had ever been alive. When you overloaded the link, you forced the bridge open." She stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "Now you have to choose. You can step across, or let it close forever." He shook his head. "I just wanted to save what's left of us." She smiled faintly. "Then save it. But understand, what you call humanity was never meant to stay small. You were meant to remember, to rebuild what we lost when the stars first burned." He looked down at his hands. Faint lines of light traced across his skin, pulsing with the same rhythm as the core. "What happens if I stay?" he asked. "The cycle ends," she said. "The black ship will fall silent again, and time will move forward without us. But if you cross, you'll bring something new into being, something beyond all of this." The commander stared into the stillness of space. He thought of Earth, of the lost colonies, of the voices that once filled the airwaves with laughter and fear and hope. Maybe the truth didn't matter as much as what came next. He took a slow breath. "Then I'll cross," he said, "but not as what they made us, as who we chose to be." The observer nodded. "Then humanity will begin again." She reached out her hand, and the space around them began to glow. The stars moved for the first time, swirling into a vast spiral of light. He took her hand, and in that instant, the world exploded into brilliance. For a moment, he saw everything. The birth of stars, the rise of civilizations, the endless cycle of creation and forgetting. He saw the truth of the black ship. It wasn't an invader or a god. It was a reminder that existence itself was a pattern, and every pattern needed renewal. Humanity had been that renewal all along. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded. He awoke lying on solid ground, the air warm and filled with sound. Wind rustled through trees, birds sang in the distance. He sat up slowly, blinking against the soft glow of a nearby sun. The sky was familiar, blue and alive. For a long moment, he thought he was back on Earth, until he noticed the horizon. The continents were shaped differently. The air carried a hum that wasn't wind but energy. The world looked new, untouched. He stood, his reflection glimmering faintly in a pool nearby. His eyes shimmered with traces of light, the same light that had once filled the core. He was still human, but not entirely. Something deeper now lived within him, something that remembered. A faint shadow crossed the sky, and he looked up. Far above, half hidden in the clouds, the outline of the black ship hovered silently, no longer a thing of terror, but of peace. It pulsed once, softly, as if in farewell, and then drifted upward until it vanished among the stars. He turned toward the horizon and saw others, people walking through the fields, looking around in wonder. Survivors from Horizon Station, and faces he recognized from long-lost colonies. Somehow they had all been brought here. A new world, a new beginning. For the first time he smiled. The past was gone, but its memory lived on in every breath of wind, every heartbeat. Humanity had not been erased, it had been reborn. But as he turned away, the pool rippled beside him, forming words that glowed faintly on the water's surface. Cycle complete. Then, just before the reflection faded, new letters formed beneath it. Next awakening. in progress. The commander froze. The sky above darkened slightly, and in the far distance, a faint flicker of light shimmered beyond the clouds, like the first spark of another ship waiting to rise. He whispered to himself, half in awe, half in fear, "It's never really over." And in the calm that followed, the world breathed, alive once more, as the shadow of the next dawn began to fall. The sun rose slowly over the new world, spreading light across the horizon like a promise. The commander stood on a small ridge overlooking the valley, where life had already begun to take shape. The survivors had built makeshift shelters near the river, their laughter faint but real. For the first time in what felt like centuries, there was no sound of alarms, no distant echo of warships, no shadow of destruction. Just wind, warmth, and the sound of people rebuilding. He had barely slept since waking here. The memories of what happened aboard the station still came to him in flashes, the pulse of the core, the explosion of light, the feeling of falling through time and space. It was impossible to tell how long had passed since then. Hours, years, maybe it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they were alive. Humanity had survived. He walked down toward the settlement, nodding at the small group of people working together to set up a water filter. Their faces were tired, but their eyes were bright with purpose. Among them was the technician, who still carried the same determined look he'd had on the station. "It's holding," he said, adjusting a piece of tubing. "Water's clean. We'll be fine for now." The commander smiled faintly. "That's good to hear. We'll need it for what comes next." "What do you think this place is?" the technician asked, glancing around. "It looks like Earth, but different. Everything feels new, like it's been waiting for us." The commander looked at the sky. The clouds drifted slowly, but every now and then they shimmered faintly, almost like energy moving through them. "Maybe it has," he said quietly. "Maybe this is what the black ship was leading us to." Later, when the settlement quieted, he sat by the river and watched the water flow past. Its surface reflected the sky in perfect clarity, but beneath it, faint threads of light still moved, reminding him that the core's energy hadn't disappeared completely. It was still here, woven into the world itself. The observer's last words echoed in his mind. "The cycle ends only when you stop remembering." He wondered what that really meant. Had they truly broken the cycle, or simply started it over again in a new form? Maybe it didn't matter. Humanity had been given another chance, born from the ashes of alien empires, from the fire and shadow of the black ship itself. What they did with that chance was what mattered now. Days turned into weeks, and the settlement grew. Crops began to sprout in the fields, tools were forged, and for the first time in generations, people began to write again, not just reports or battle logs, but stories, songs, and memories. They recorded what they could remember of the old worlds, and the younger ones listened wide-eyed, as if hearing legends. The commander often joined them at night, sitting by the fire while the stars glowed faintly above. Sometimes, the light of the black ship flickered far beyond the clouds, distant, silent, and watchful. One evening, as the campfire burned low, the technician approached him holding a small device. It was a fragment of the ship's interface, blackened and half-melted, but still faintly pulsing with light. "I found this near the ridge," he said. "It's still active, though I don't know how. Maybe it's trying to communicate." The commander took it carefully, feeling the faint vibration beneath his fingers. The rhythm was steady, familiar, like a heartbeat. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he said softly, "It's not trying to talk to us. It's remembering us." He placed the fragment on the ground, and together they watched as it glowed brighter, projecting faint images into the air. They saw fragments of the past, the alien cities that once filled the stars, the rise of the human fleets, the long wars that followed. But they also saw moments of peace, children on old Earth running through fields, explorers laughing as they stepped onto new worlds. It was as if the fragment was gathering every piece of memory, both human and alien, and weaving them together into a single thread. When the light faded, the technician whispered, "So, it wasn't just about power or control. The core wanted to preserve everything." The commander nodded slowly. "It wanted to keep us from forgetting. Every world that fell, every life lost, it all became part of something bigger. Maybe that's what it means to survive, not just to live, but to remember." As the night deepened, a soft wind swept across the valley. The stars above flickered like they were alive, and for a brief moment, the faint silhouette of the black ship appeared among them. No longer dark and menacing, but silver and calm. It hovered there, silent and beautiful, as if watching over them. Then slowly, it began to fade, its outline breaking apart into thousands of tiny lights that scattered across the sky like new stars being born. The next morning, the commander woke before dawn. The air was cool and still. He climbed back to the ridge and looked out at the horizon. The settlement below was quiet, smoke rising gently from the cooking fires. In the distance, green forests stretched as far as he could see. It was a living world, full of promise. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in years it didn't taste like metal or fear. It tasted like life. He thought of all they had lost and all they had gained. Humanity had crossed through darkness, through war, through extinction itself, and still found a way to begin again. Maybe that was their true strength. Not their weapons, not their machines, but their ability to rebuild, to adapt, to rise again even after everything fell apart. That was what made them human. As he turned to head back, he noticed something at the edge of the path, a small flower pushing up through the soil. Its petals shimmered faintly, reflecting traces of the same light that had once filled the core. He knelt down and touched it gently. It felt warm, alive, different. Perhaps this world wasn't just their new home, it was their creation, a bridge between what they were and what they could become. Later, he gathered the people and told them what he believed, that they weren't just survivors, they were the beginning of something new. The light of the black ship wasn't gone. It lived within them now, a reminder of where they came from and how far they could still go. They had been born from fire and shadows, but what they built next would be their own. That night, as the stars shimmered, the commander looked up one last time. The sky was full of light, not from warships or dying worlds, but from the promise of what lay ahead. Somewhere, deep in the universe, new life was stirring. The cycle might one day return, but humanity would be ready, not as victims of history, but as its authors. He smiled faintly as the wind moved through the trees. The echoes of the past no longer haunted him. They had become something else, part of the story that would carry forward long after he was gone. The world around him was quiet, but in that quiet, there was hope. The shadow of the black ship had finally lifted, and from its darkness, a new dawn had been born. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the first lights of morning touched the land, and humanity, reborn from the ashes of alien empires, took its first steps into a future of its own making. The story of the black ship had ended, not in silence, but in the sound of life beginning again.